Today I will be talking about television programs and their effects behind it. I'll be discussing two different shows which include Caillou and the Powerpuff Girls, and with the input of my nieces, I will tell you how they behaved after watching both shows. During this episode of the Powerpuff Girls entitled Bubble Vicious, Bubbles is feeling angry because her sisters baby her and they don't think she's as strong as them. So Bubbles wants to prove them wrong, and she does that by demonstrating a lot of anger towards her enemy and her sisters. As I said before, Bubbles has a lot to prove. So during a friendly game of tag, Bubbles wrestles her sister in the dirt to prove she's strong too. But Bubbles goes too far and ends up hurting Blossom. That is an aggressive incident. Worried that their little sister Bubbles may be taking this hardcore image a little bit too far, they rush to check on her, only to be shut out by angry words and a bad attitude by Bubbles. She doesn't want to hear anything they have to say, and she doesn't care what they think either. Bubbles is fed up with their sisters babying her, so she decides to bring down one of their biggest enemies. That definitely caught the attention of her sisters, and they finally realize that Bubbles is just as strong as them, and to not treat her like a baby. After defeating their enemy, Bubbles finally calms down enough to tell her sister how she feels, and her sisters finally listen. They all come together, reunited with a new purpose to never tear each other down with harsh words, and to always listen to one another, no matter what. On this episode of Caillou, his mission is to help others, so he decides to draw his mommy a picture to make her feel better. Although, in every mission there has to be at least one or two setbacks, but with the right encouragement, anything is possible. Caillou struggles with sharing, and as Rosie and Caillou were arguing over a toy they like, they kept pushing and pulling it from one another, causing Rosie to fall, and Caillou instantly regrets his action as his little sister starts to cry. As a consolation present, Caillou decides to let his little sister play with his toys after all. Although Rosie is still a little upset and hurt, that doesn't stop her from having a little fun, and Caillou appreciates that. Later one night, little baby Rosie is having trouble sleeping, so she starts to cry. And like any good brother, they immediately tell their sister to shut up and keep it down. Just kidding, Caillou reads his sister a bedtime story and she eventually falls right to sleep. In this episode of Caillou, it seems to be that he isn't the only one with sharing problems. These two brothers can't find it within themselves to share or to take turns, so they continue to fight over a rocket until they go into time out instead, and neither of them enjoys that. My oldest niece, who is 7 years old, did not like the Bubble Vicious Powerpuff Girl episode. She didn't like Blossom and Buttercup treating Bubbles like a baby, and she didn't like Bubbles being mean to her sisters. She said they all need to be nice to each other. Not surprisingly, my 5-year-old niece loved the Bubble Vicious episode. After watching it, she ran around the house, jumping and yelling, "I'm hardcore," or trying to wrestle her older sister, thinking she was the enemy. Although laughable, she did inherit some of the anger from Bubbles. Talia loved Caillou's sweet attitude towards his sister and immediately asked her mom to give her a brother. But she didn't like when he hurt Rosie, so she was yelling at Caillou through the screen, telling him that he needs to share too. He needs to be nice to Rosie. Malaysia had the same attitude about Caillou. She loved him when he was sweet, didn't like when he hurt Rosie. The funny thing is, this episode made Malaysia tell Talia, her older sister, that she needs to share her toys more often too. There was a total of 5 aggressive incidents in the Powerpuff Girls and only 2 aggressive incidents in Caillou. Although there are 2 different kinds of shows, the Powerpuff Girls are crime fighters, so it's obvious as to why they have more aggressive encounters in Caillou. There were a total of 3 pro-social behavior incidents in the Powerpuff Girls as they tried to help Bubbles with her hurt feelings and misuse of anger. In Caillou, there was a total of 4 pro-social behavior encounters as he demonstrated behaviors of being a good big brother. Although the Powerpuff Girls has a lot of aggressive content since they are crime fighters, I believe it's a good balance. They're fighting the bad guys and they're working together. While they're doing it, they're supporting one another and they're letting girls know that they can be superheroes as well. Caillou is an average, everyday preschooler. He shows his happy, his sad, and angry moments, but he also shows his kindness as an older brother. He learns many lessons, and if Caillou is learning, so is the toddler watching it. A preschooler seeing Caillou will learn what's right and wrong. In conclusion, I believe any child could have a different reaction to watching these same TV programs, mostly because of their own individual personality and their home training. But young kids are very impressionable and they will do or want to do what they see on TV. So as parents, we have to be careful.